Thank you for joining us for another episode of Moving Offline. Today we have Owen Pai. He's going to talk to us about his experience with dumb phones over the past 2 years, just what is to use a minimal phone, his career, and other things that may come up like parenting, which is very, very important, especially for some of you out there that want to spend more time with your family or kids if you have them, and how a minimal phone or a dumb phone can help in that journey. Owen, thank you for being here. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and what prompted your change to a minimal device.
Thank you, Jose. I appreciate that. Thanks for having me on the podcast here, and it's an honor. Yeah, so I guess a little bit about me and kind of why I decided to pick up the light phone. I think it's a number of reasons that could have led to it. The thing I can most pinpoint is I think every time, well, first of all, they have clever marketing and their design and their product is wonderful. So every time I saw something about it or read something about it, I would kind of go over and almost just like you do with any other tech product, go, oh, that looks kind of nice. Like, the grass is always greener, especially with technology and whatever. And so I just started looking at that. And also at that time too, was considering things like, Cal Newport's book, which we're all familiar with digital minimalism, and reading that. I mean, I guess my experience in total and really a culmination of all this stuff is social media has always been a big part of my life. Grew up in the late 90s, and really around that turn of the century or turn of the millennium, technology, always having the internet in your room and being connected. And I rode that out. I really, I had a significant following at the time. Was MySpace, and then I had a significant following on Facebook and Twitter. I at one time had like 20,000 Twitter followers and all that nonsense. And when you really like count the cost of it all, you're like, okay, but how much like real life dollars have I made justifying that for the sake of networking or the sake of this is important? And when you start doing that, and I think people that really honestly do that, yeah, you meet a couple of cool people sometimes, but like if you spent that much time literally in any aspect of life, especially in a real world setting, you would become like the expert, the most networked person in that field. If you were spending 10,000 hours at a business B2B conference or whatever, I don't know what the equivalent would be as far as scrolling on Twitter, but you would be like the most plugged in person. So saw the advertisements, all that stuff, and said, I'm gonna buy this at some point. But at first, I was the $300 price point. I think everybody sees it and they go, oh, that's a little pricey, specifically the light phone. And I was like, well, I don't have that kind of money. Let's just try a flip phone. So I did a $40 thing I found on eBay, threw the SIM card in there, and I really did not miss it. I didn't miss the smartphone part of it. And really I'm kind of an all or nothing person. So I decided, hey, let's just go full speed with this. Let's get off of social. Let's do all that stuff. So I deleted my Instagram, my Facebook, my Twitter, deleted all those accounts, and then basically just said, hey, if you want to get a hold of me, here's my information. And I did keep my YouTube channel going, which was really just a different thing for me. And then basically said, if you want to get a hold of me, you can also jump on. I had a mailing list from years ago and said, jump on this. And I think like 2 people did, because nowadays, if you need to find someone, you can. You don't need a smartphone to do it necessarily.
Something that I heard from you was that you have gotten a measured success in your social media, and a lot of people desire that. A lot of people think they need to be available all the time in order to network, make money, and create a life of meaning. And I believe that is a trap, but I want to hear why is it that you decided and how it affected your job or your connections with people. Has it had a negative effect, or has it been a positive effect, or maybe a mix of both? So what was the effect of not being available all the time in these platforms?
It's a great question. I think it is. I think the word I can't remember the word you use, but it's a facade. I really do think it's a marketing ploy. It's one of those things that we've all just kind of bought into. First of all, the people that are closest to you, it's almost like the bumper sticker phrase, the people that care won't mind, and the people that mind, they don't matter. That whole phrase, someone could fix that for me. But the idea is the people closest to you, if they're aware of the situation, honestly, the hardest immediate connection would be if you have a really close relationship, like with a spouse or someone like that, where you depend on something like a Telegram or WhatsApp. But the grand scale, what you're talking about, social media specifically, I really think it's not needed. It's not necessary. It's an it's a nice to have, but if you could have a nice to have that also like significantly negatively impacted your mental health, you wouldn't it wouldn't really be a nice to have at that point. And at the time too, I was the marketing manager for a company, and so I had a lot of, I had Asana, I had Airtable, I had all these, I had Teams, Microsoft Teams, all these communication platforms, Slack, all these things that people are trying to get a hold of you depending on their department. And if you have office hours, that's a big help because you're at the computer, you're whatever. So there's no major disadvantage that I could find. The only really kind of pushback you'll have is when you are in person with a human and they see what you have as your device. Then there's a moment there, and it's usually positive. You're usually like, "Oh, that's your phone? That does that? Oh, that's great. Oh, wow. I need to get something like that for my kid." Not for me, because I don't need that. But they'll say that. And so there's a little tinge there. Or I've had clients of mine say, "Hey, what kind of phone do you have?" Or they'll say, "Do you own an iPhone?" They'll say that question. And I'm very much, I don't correct people unless I have to. And so I'll be like, "Yeah, I have an iPhone. I don't use it, but I have one." But what I know what they're thinking is, will I be able to get a hold of this person if I contact them? And the answer is yes. If you call me, if you text me, if you email me, like if you write me a letter, I'll respond. I'll be easy to get a hold of. But yeah, it's just that immediate connection that can be a little bit dissonant. But 99% of the time, it's positive. And people want to hold a dumb phone. They want something different because something inside you goes, "This is not useful to me as a human. There's no part of this that's actually benefiting me as a whole person."
I heard you there say that there is a difference between what people want and what we desire. So it seems that some of your clients were saying you need iMessage in your life, and that is a helpful tool. We can communicate overseas, over Wi-Fi, and data. But you also mentioned it was a detriment to you. And I think a lot of people are finding themselves in that space where I want to make it very, very convenient for people to contact me. But this device, let it be a computer, let it be a tablet, let it be a smartphone, whatever smart device it is draining me and damaging the quality of my relationships, my work, and my life. Of course, it sounds drastic, and it may not be that drastic for most people, but I do believe there are some people that do have that experience. So, talk to me about maybe your personal relationships and how they have morphed in these past 2 years that you have had a minimal device like the light phone. And what are some of those benefits that you were missing in the past that you didn't even know about?
There there is something about how the way you allow people to treat you is the way they'll treat you. And so in a sense, technology has its own set of boundaries that we create. And I think the benefit is the people that you need to be in touch with that actually matter, employers, clients, important people that you actually want to do work with, that you actually want to have life experiences with, will not care about if you're on iMessage or not. Yes, it'll be now I say that the caveat is there may be some group threads that you are excluded from because when they try to create the thread, oh, it's green, it's not blue, which iMessage, the whole thing, they'll leave you out of that. That's okay. I mean, if you can come to peace with that, you're not now a group thread actually just like stresses me out. The more group threads I'm in, I'm like, oh my god, here it goes. It's going, and I'll just mute the thread for a period of time, and then I'll go back through it when I can and go, here's where I need to connect with that person. Hey, I saw in that thread you were asking about this. Let's just have a 3-minute conversation about it. So the benefit is you've set a boundary about what you're willing to do, which is not be plugged in all the time, which is not to be endless feeding and available, because at the end of the day, it's an oxymoron, because if you're available to everyone, you're available to nobody. So you're not truly available in the sense that you can have an impactful conversation. You can go any layer deeper. Setting that boundary gives you that your life back in a lot of ways. It gives you, and the caveat is you have to still be good at the things you do. If you suck at them, then no one's going to try to get in touch with you. But if you're good at what you do, or if you're perfecting or working on your craft, then people will absolutely inconvenience themselves slightly to work with you and be within your boundaries.
What I heard right there was that you have the ability to still make money to survive. And that a lot of people think that they're going to miss on this economic engine of the internet and connections, networking, and doing all of these things. How have you maybe make sure that you're proactive to not fall behind? Because the internet is a very productive tool when it comes to reaching out to people or getting to know a job or getting new clients. But how can you stay proactive while having a minimal device? And then we'll jump into a completely different category.
I think it gets into a little bit more old school approach. I have a box of business cards behind me, and I can't recommend enough to have a nice looking business card that you keep in your pocket. So when you meet a person, you don't have to be weird. You don't have to be like, "Hey, can I have your phone number?" Or, "Hey, put your number into my little dumb phone." You can just say, "Hey, it was nice meeting you. If you ever need XYZ," for me, it's video or photo or marketing related stuff. And so, I'm having those conversations and saying, "Hey, if you ever need anything like that, let me know." And that's a very soft sell. Like I personally am not a hard salesman type of guy. If you don't want to work with me, that's fine. There's plenty of other people to work with. So there's a way to make money there. Referrals is where it's at just in general. So I've never gotten a job where someone only knew me from the internet. I don't think. I've had relationships and connections, but I really think still those things happened outside of those channels. You see something and go, I'm going to try to connect with that person, I'm try to get in touch with that person. So at that point, your social media is almost just a billboard. So if people are looking for you, maybe you could make the case for having, and I've done this on some of my channels now. I reopened a Facebook account, and I'm not on Facebook, but I use it literally for like when my kid is in a theater production, they'll start a Facebook group and they'll have all their communications in there. So I'll join that, or using Facebook to manage a social media page. So sometimes there are scenarios where you still have to like use those tools, but I'm not on Facebook. I rarely check anything else. I don't have Twitter. I don't have all these things, TikTok or Snapchat. So you really do not need it. And I think if anybody out there listening to this or interacting with this type of content that's on the fence, they really need to just sit down with a notepad and just guess how many hours they've spent on these tools for the sake of X. And then they go and then say, how many, if I'm really honest, how many in purely from having a smartphone or purely from being plugged into these networks 24/7 jobs or dollars have I made? And then just write that out and just say, is it justified? And the other piece of this is once you go, okay, that's not an ROI that's worthwhile to justify, and say I'm going to try something new, then you can find a way to still make money. It's not challenging to make money still. It is uncomfortable to find new ways to communicate and to try things differently. But at the end of the day, you don't want to just keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result.
There's something to be said about people that use these services only as a means to communicate with others. I think that will be the ideal, right? Where you have friends and family in other places, and you're like, I'm going to use Facebook or Instagram or whatever social app to reach out to them. The reality is that most of us, when we go into those platforms, usually people end up using them for entertainment as well. So our habits change and our desires change and our entertainment preferences change. So talk to me about your habits. What has changed in your family and how have you managed all of that? Because going from being entertained all the time through reels and posts and discussions to having a void is probably very difficult. And I'd like to know how you manage some of that boredom experience.
Yeah. Well, I wish I could say that I'm a perfect human and I fill those voids with like, I'm just making kombucha and which I am trying to do that, but that's beside the point. Doing these like very organic and I think there's something about people see that and go, that's not me. I don't know how to do that. And so for me and the entertainment part, and even the OG Cal Newport talking about this in his book, if you don't intentionally, when you pull things away from yourself, when you minimize, when you retreat, if you don't intentionally go towards something, you're going to be unintentionally drawn towards something else. And at the end of the day, our bodies and our minds, and I'm not a counselor or a therapist or anything, just from my experience, our body is just trying to get us to the next day. So if that means I'm going to binge watch on Netflix, then, or I'm going to scroll through Instagram, and obviously we're moving away from that in this example to something else, that if we can't, like you said, find intentionality, it's not gonna, it's the byproduct, it's the symptom of the habit. So I guess for me, the way I've tried to do it is when I feel that urge, as it were, to just doom scroll or something, and I'm not great at this. This is me actively talking to myself about this. Is like audibly say, "Hey, let's try something else." Like just say that to myself. Let's do something else. Like you can kind of catch yourself getting bored. And something I've tried as a father, try to instill in my kids, because they'll do the same thing. They'll come to me. They'll say, "I haven't watched a show today. I haven't been on an iPad today. Let me do that thing. I'm bored." And boredom is like the key, because boredom is the stepping stone to doing something creative. So if you can, people are like, "Oh, I'm so bored." Like that is like the best thing. If you can stop for a moment and go, "This is great. I'm realizing I'm bored right now. So now I have a fresh slate that I can intentionally turn my sail and go somewhere useful." So boredom is like this like necessary step to an intentionality. So when I'm in a healthy state, I'm going, okay, I don't want to do that. I don't want to binge on Netflix. I'm gonna go do something useful, or actually go to my task list and work on something. The opposite is true as well, where if I notice that I'm drawn to do that on an iPad, on a computer, I'm I know that I'm not healthy. I'm not eating right. I'm not sleeping well. I'm not exercising. I'm not drinking enough water, or I'm disaligned with a relationship that is meaningful in my life.
Now let's get into a little bit of the final part, which I like to talk about. You talked about using a flip phone and now the light phone too. And why did you decide to stick with it? A lot of people say the battery life is terrible, the directions don't work. There's millions of excuses as to say, hey, this device is not for me, or reasons, not necessarily excuses. But how have you been able to stick it out now for a longer period of time? It's not just a detox for 30 days, but it's 2 years. So how has it worked for you? And what are some of those recommendations that you can give to people that are on the fence?
I would say it's almost like cutting up a credit card. If you ever really need to go back, you can just request another one. So I would say, especially early on, getting rid of your smartphone is the best way to do it. But over time, and just to be completely honest with you and your audience, I've had to go on a work trip where I go, I'm going to put a smartphone in my bag. I'm not going to put my SIM card in, but I'm going to have it. Or I've at times swapped it completely for a day or two, and I don't feel any, as long as I don't stick with that for more than a day or two, and it's a justified reason, then I don't feel bad doing that. And the whole point of it is not to be a shame thing anyway. So the point of it is just to go, okay, this is a better norm for me. So I guess the reason I've stuck with it is when I'm using that device consistently, where I'm using a dumb phone device, that usually is an indicator that other things are intentional in my day. So I guess I've stuck with the light phone, especially because we've talked. I think you've talked about this. It is, take the smartphone dumb phone thing out of it. It is one of the most like progressive pieces of technology that I've owned, where it every day gets better and better and better. It's like, that's brilliant. Like there's things that even like, this is like totally nuanced. And if you don't have a dumb phone, or you don't have a light phone, you won't know what I'm talking about. But even just the act of like pressing and holding on the text, and that forwards to my email, that is such a brilliant UI decision that I haven't seen. And now if I ever am on another device, or if I have like an iPhone for a day on a work trip, I'm like, oh man, I wish I could just send this to my email and remind myself to come back to this. But there are some things that are actually better with a device like that. And like the dashboard is like really clean. So if it sucked, I probably wouldn't still use it, but it is great. My only downfalls have been just purely wear and tear. I've stuck with it because of the intentionality. And then there's something about, this too, with the community that you've helped kind of build as well. The the growing number of people and in that are going, hey, this is not how I want to live my life. So it's kind of fun that there is like a little community of people out there that are like, yes, this is real. Yes, I'm gonna unplug from this. It's like a soft rebellion of sorts to like big tech and the man, as it were. Not to sound like a hippie, but like there's something about being a part of a group of folks and a community that goes, yeah, there's a better way to do this. And then once you finally make that decision of like, this is a better thing for me, there are other people that you find that go, oh yeah. And it's literally the least like conceited environment I've ever come across, where it's like, it's not a judgment thing. It's not like those people are lame and we're great. It's just like, we get it. And like, yeah, keep going. That's awesome. Like, what other ways can we do better as a human?
When I listen to what you're saying, I hear like that there are frustrations even in the dumb phone life. And I mean, the light phone is not a perfect device. There are better phones out there, but it's kind of like if you decide to stick with it and to learn to adapt your life to it, then you can gain a lot of benefits. And that's what I heard a little bit. Is like I've been sticking with it because it works as a better default for me. It gives me a better mindset, more intentional day, whatever it is that it's working with you. That's the secret sauce. A lot of people want to have the secret to a more present life, but it's just sticking with something and adapting to it so that you can gain a better perspective. One last question, and then I'll give you a final word. Owen, thank you for sharing some of these thoughts and ideas about the economy, social media, and stuff like that. But tell me more about your projects, and the work that you do, and how this better default, or what are the habits that you are trying to incorporate so that you can become a better person, a better family member, and just, a better influence in this world.
I think from the parenting part, it's the kids have learned and seen, when we're out and about or whatever, it's like, when we're at home, there's always a smart like speaker or something, right? Like, hey, Alexa, play blah blah blah, and it'll play it. Well, when you're out and about and you have a default of a dumb phone or something like that, those tools go away. And so there's something nice about your kids seeing that and going, oh, and the reason we don't have that is because it's not depriving us necessarily. It's just like this person in our life is going is basically just decided to go a different route. And so they see that. And actually my oldest daughter is 10 and she is basically been like, I want to get a light phone. I want to get a I don't want a smartphone. So she like some of that has rubbed off on her. And so she's still young and malleable, I guess. But my older son has, he really wanted smartphone for years and years and years, and we held him off. And we finally, when he was 13, got him one, but it wasn't an unfiltered one. It was a pinwheel gated device. Like there's no browser, there's no nothing on there, there's no social media, so very gated. And if I could give one disclaimer to parents out there, like if it's way easier to not give your kid a smartphone than it is to give it and then take it away. So try if you are young in the parenting part, like don't just don't do it. Like it's going to be hard because all the Gen Z and Gen Alpha kids are getting them, and like every kid within a one block radius of our house has like a freaking TikTok, like regardless of their age. I mean, there's like a 6-year-old kid next door with a TikTok, and so the point, I guess, what I'm trying to say is like if you can in your home and in your environment create a default of healthy boundaries and solutions, that's gonna transcend, especially as you start having kids, if and when. And so that influence is a lot easier to instill. It's a lot harder to unplug after and then try to transfer that down to younger generations. But the default is still there. My kids are seeing it and understand it, and I'm really happy for them for that. And we try to cut back on screens, and it's hard though. It really is. It's hard to not use tech to distract temporarily, and good distractions aren't always bad. That's not the point. But I guess what I'm saying is the default of the people that really matter in your life seeing a different normal is ideal.
Thank you, Owen, for that. And that makes me reflect and say, yes, the prolonged use of non-smart devices can yield positive results. And, I never thought about the parenting side. I'm not a parent myself, but I think it's important to recognize the longer we take to introduce technology to our children, the more they have to develop other mediums to solve problems. And I do remember for myself, once I got a calculator, and I think, probably high school, that's the first time I actually owned one. That's when I stopped trying to do math in my head because it was the easier thing. And this is not a high tech product, but the correlation goes with our high tech, right? What are you stopping somebody from developing the ability to do by introducing this piece of technology? As always, I like to leave my guests with the final word. So tell us where people can find you, anything that comes to your mind about this topic or any other topics. And yeah, any ideas that can be helpful for the audience to know.
I appreciate that. How can they find me? Well, okay, I do have an Instagram page now. I started one, and I try not to be on there, but if you sent me a DM, I would get it and I would respond to you. It's just at Owen Pye, OwenPye. Sounds like the food. And then actually, I would love it if you would check out the YouTube channel, which I've been trying to grow for the last couple of years, and it's had its seasons of effort. But it's just at Laughing Dad. So if you look that up on YouTube, if you search it, you probably won't get it because all that is a bunch of garbage search results. It was a terrible YouTube name, but if you just at Laughing Dad in the search, it'll work. So I would love to connect with you all in there. And then, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, just trying to live life like everybody else. I don't have it all together. If you have any questions about the parenting stuff when it comes to tech, like I'd love to answer those questions for anybody. Because yeah, it's we're just trying to live it. We're trying to make it happen out here. So, and if you need any video work, get a hold of me if you live in the Midwest.
That was Owen Pye and his thoughts on the economy for social media, whether it's necessary. As a creator himself, does have experience in that, honing your craft, habits, and parenting. I hope out of this conversation you got something useful and that you're able to practice a little bit more of an intentional lifestyle in your everyday life. Thank you for listening to Moving Offline, and we'll see you the next time.